BeTheTalk, episode 234, featuring Chrissy Levett. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Chrissy Levett. Chrissy, are you ready to talk?
Absolutely.
Chrissy Levett is an award-winning creative director who studied at the Royal College of Art in London. She's the founder and CEO of Creative Conscience, a global organization that encourages and rewards creative thinkers to use their talents for social justice. Chrissy Levett, welcome to the talk.
Oh, thank you, Nate.
Well, I am so happy to have you. Your talk is called Vulnerability, the Key to Unlocking Your Creative Genius. I love your talk because you mention a struggle that you have had with dyslexia, and then you go into some of the difficult things. Normally for the rest of us, they would be slips of the tongue, but in your case, it's a condition of dyslexia and how that created difficult situations for you in the workplace. There was somebody, for example, named Hugh, but in your mind in the talk, you mentioned huge, and he was a little bit, perhaps, shall we say, a little larger. And so that was an example of a very difficult situation. You weren't trying to be silly or funny or inappropriate at all. It was just a condition, and you found that you had to be vulnerable in order to be able to perform and do your very best. So I just wanted to set the plate a little bit. Please, Chrissy, take us behind the talk.
Oh, well, I was asked to do this TEDx talk to inspire a community around actually getting creative. So it wasn't very easy because it was quite a kind of particular brief, I would say. So yeah, I just talk about all the mistakes I made really, and all the kind of humorous situations I got myself into through being inauthentic. And then I go on to talk about how creativity can build social change around sustainability, social justice, and that I believe that we're all creative.
I love the quote in your talk. You say you can only be brave if you're vulnerable. When did you realize that to be the case for you, Chrissy?
Sadly, quite late. Probably about 10 years ago. So I wish someone had said that to me when I was in my 20s or even younger. Yeah, quite late to understand that.
For sure. What in your life, if you can take us back, when did you realize that you had dyslexia and some of the implications of that? Were you formally diagnosed at some point, or did you kind of stumble through life or struggle through life with all of these, self-limiting beliefs that many people have when they have that kind of a condition? Please just take us back behind the backstory, maybe some of the things that didn't make it into your talk.
Yeah, well, back in the day, I mean, we're talking about the 70s when I was at school, there wasn't such a thing of dyslexia or dyspraxia or autism or any of these. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My brother and I were particularly dyslexic. And I would suggest that we were just led to believe that we were stupid. I mean, my brother, I remember, my parents went into school and they actually said that my brother was retarded. Now, my brother has gone on to become a surgeon. So clearly he wasn't stupid. It's just the way our educational system has been set up. So if you only learn in a particular way. What was the
situation with your brother then, Chrissy? People thought that he was slow in some way, but he actually became a surgeon. So he proved all of that wrong. Did he also have dyslexia, or did he have some other condition? Or wow,
exactly the same. Both of us, I think. I mean, we were just sort of, I guess we were thought through the schooling system to be stupid, to be slow, because we couldn't read and write. But we weren't. We were intelligent individuals, which I think we've both gone on to prove. And actually, it was a kind of a bit of a gift, really, to be put in that situation, because I think we both became incredibly tenacious and went on to be successful in our fields.
Wow. And can you speak to that, the power of perseverance and tenacity to be able to overcome the naysayers? What did in your brother's case, in your case, did you get a little bit of a fire inside of you, or a little bit motivated to prove people wrong? Was it some other desire? What helped you through that? Because a lot of times when someone puts a diagnosis on us, it's a word, it's a label, and it can define us if we're not very careful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for my brother, but for myself, it just made me so determined. I think actually if I hadn't been labeled so stupid, I wouldn't have probably gone on to achieve what I have today. So it was a kind of a gift that the system behaved like that. I'm not sure that it's the same today. I think a lot of people are aware of different areas, people being on the spectrum, if you like, and actually it's quite a different situation today, I'd say.
Well, and the big word that I hear a lot is neurodiversity. And really, there's a wonderful case being made that no matter, you mentioned the spectrum, if you're highly focused and maybe not the most socially, traditional in a social way, there are new work models that are putting people to work in highly paid jobs, troubleshooting, locating, kind of laser diagnosing things that the rest of us aren't going to get because we're not focused enough. I've heard on the other end, and I don't know if it really is the other end, but what in a general way might seem like another end, I've heard of people who have Down syndrome being employed in the service industry in coffee shops and restaurants just because they are so personable many times and so friendly, and the rest of us could learn a lot about social intelligence from hanging around such caring people. So what are your thoughts on some of the new advances that we've made and being able to kind of leave, I would like to say leave some of the stigma in, behind. We know that's not the case, but we know that society hopefully is moving generally in a better direction. What are your thoughts on that, Chrissy?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We're all different, and often people who think differently can be more creative or focus on things in a different way. We're working actually here in the UK, Creative Conscience, our organisation is working to try and get the creative industries much more engaged with neurodiversity. So we've done talks, and a lot of people within our community, within our creative community, will say that they have dyslexia or dyspraxia, or they might be slightly autistic, or they have these gifts, if you like, or these different way of thinking. So yeah, absolutely. It's beginning to shift, which is great. I'm glad to hear that. And if you want to know a little bit more about Chrissy's organization, Creative Intelligence, or Creative Conscience, rather. That's right. If you want to hear about Creative Conscience, I'm going to give you the link later in the show. We've been enjoying this talk with Chrissy Levett from TEDx St. Peterport. Her talk is called Vulnerability, the Key to Unlocking Your Creative Genius. And we're going to be back in just a second for the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Chrissy Levett. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm about to ask Chrissy a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent branded talk. Chrissy, are you ready? Yes. All right. Well, you already answered the first question I normally ask. Were you invited to speak or did you apply? And you were invited to speak, correct? Yes, correct. So you walk out on stage. Did you have nerves, Chrissy, or were you in the zone, or neither or both? Yes, I was very nervous. The person who was hosting it had told us each person that was going to be there on the event that we should have a hug before we go on stage. So I was very fortunate enough to get a fantastic hug. that released a lot of the cortisone levels. But yeah, I was nervous.
Isn't that great? Now, how did you deal with it? Did you walk out on stage and you didn't run away? You committed to the talk. And at that point, did the nerves, become manageable, or how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think breathing is always a good thing. Before you go on stage, lots and lots of deep breaths. If someone's around that can give you at least a 30-second hug. But yeah, once, you're up there, you just kind of get on with it, don't you? So it was fine.
Very good. Well, I love the idea of, having a hug before you go on stage. I think that should be mandatory, but, then again, I'm not in a position to lay that stuff, out right there. Chrissy, are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
A blender, definitely.
How does that work for you?
I think I kind of pretty much memorized the things that I wanted to say, but then whenever I get up there, I kind of just go off on a bit of a, free flow. So yeah, don't beat yourself up, I guess, if it goes a bit off piste.
What's a tip, technique, or a tool that helped you?
Just really being passionate about what you're talking about, I'd say, is the biggest thing. Because then if you do forget what you're saying, it will just come naturally.
What is, this is the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out for time?
I don't think there was one. I think that if anything, I was looking for something to put in.
Okay.
Probably didn't find enough to say.
Talk Universe, that's not normally the case. So this might be the first time I've heard that response. I love it. So, this is, if that was the cut for time question, this is the Murphy's Law question. You ready? What's the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk, Chrissy?
During the talk, the timer either wasn't working or I couldn't see it or something. And so what's ironic about it is that I went over time, even though I was searching for things to fill up the time with. And I think that's probably to do with I went a little bit off piste. So yeah. Okay. Well, that's why they have the timer there, I guess. But hey, it made it up. So that's all good stuff. Any improvements to what would you have done differently if you did it again? What would you do differently to prepare? I'm not sure I can answer that. I think it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I hate watching it. Find it horribly painful. Every time I go, it just makes me cringe. And yet I'm still doing it now. I know in the UK we probably say, I try not to say, as much as I do. Chrissy, I'm going to give you a little secret. We do all of that stuff here. And I think it's universal. I think it's universal. And there's a real popular, I don't even want to call it a trend. It's kind of a school of thought. It's almost a best practice right now that if you're too polished as a speaker and you don't say or like or filler words like everyone else, like I just did, you become a little less relatable to people. If you really want to connect, it can be helpful to strategically, be able to perform the talk, but then go and make it a little bit imperfect. So, just so you know. Good to know. Yeah. Just so you know. You made me feel so much better. Yeah. So it's all good. And I'm sure there are different opinions about that. We've been enjoying this talk with Chrissy Levett, and I want to let you know where you can go to watch this talk that Chrissy doesn't watch as much, but I think you should watch it because it's a good talk. It's called Vulnerability, the Key to Unlocking Your Creative Genius. You can go to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com. We are going to have a link right there that you can use, and you can click right on it. You can also click on creativeconscience.org.uk, creativeconscience.org.uk to find out more about Chrissy, to connect with Chrissy. If you have anyone that is close to you or yourself have people who are on the spectrum or any of these neurodiverse conditions that we're talking about, and you want more resources
go over to Chrissy's website and connect with her and see what they are doing over there in the UK. Some great work. Now, in a minute, we are going to be back with Chrissy Levett for the 10-second final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with the final word of advice for Talk Universe. What is it, Chrissy?
Be passionate. Make sure whatever you're talking about, you are passionate about it. That is my single word of advice.
Chrissy Levett, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.